Let's talk about the ghost in your own machine. Seriously. Imagine there's a blueprint for who you're supposed to be. Your potential, your joy, your peace. But the person actually living your life seems to be following a different, corrupted set of plans. This isn't some mystical curse. It's an inside job. It's the invisible architect of your most self-defeating moments. The force that takes the wheel and steers you straight into the wall, right when the road ahead was finally clear. Do you recognize that feeling? That baffling disconnect when your actions betray your deepest intentions? Have you ever found yourself in the quiet and a thought flickers across your mind? A thought that wears your voice but spouts poison. That thought that says, they're just putting up with you. That you're fundamentally flawed. That anything good you touch will eventually turn to dust. Now here's the paradox that will change everything. That voice, that force, it isn't trying to destroy you. It's trying to protect you. But its definition of safety is horribly outdated. It's operating from a place of old pain, a wound you've mistaken for your personality. You've normalized living on the verge of a breakdown, running patterns that you know lead to misery, wrecking relationships you cherish, silencing the very part of you that's screaming for help under a mask of, I'm fine. Have you ever truly asked yourself why you do the things you do when no one is watching? Why you spiral into cycles of dark obsession? Why you cling to habits that are tearing you apart, even as you're fully aware of the damage? This isn't a character flaw. It's not a moral failure. It's a signal, a warning light on your internal dashboard that you've ignored for so long. The system had to start shutting down critical functions to get your attention. And now I'm going to tell you something that might feel like an accusation, but it's actually an explanation. If you feel like an exposed nerve in a numb world, if you feel emotions with a brutal intensity, if your life feels like a constant storm, it's because your internal operating system is not standard. It's a high sensitivity model, processing data at an extraordinary rate, and that's a challenge, not for you, but for a world that runs on low resolution emotions. Because people like you can't be ignored. Your presence is felt. It has a weight. It disrupts the comfortable denial in others because you broadcast a raw, unfiltered truth that they've learned to bury deep within themselves. And here's the core of the issue. That intensity, that overthinking, that deep feeling, it isn't a bug. It's a feature. They are high alert sensors, indicators that a fundamental need in your life has been critically neglected. But instead of reading the alert, you've tried to mute it with noise. You've built elaborate routines to shield you from your own thoughts. You've crammed your days with so much static that you can't hear the insistent whisper from your own core. But you can't delete it because it isn't an error. It's a part of you that needs to be integrated. And the more you push it away, the louder it gets, manifesting as addictions, compulsions, toxic dynamics, chronic stress, behaviors that make no logical sense but persist because they are your system's desperate, misguided attempts to self-regulate. And what's the most twisted part of this? Society never taught you to see your pain as data. It taught you to see it as shame, to hide it, to patch it over with productivity and cheap positivity. Yet here you are. The warning light is still flashing. In fact, it's brighter than ever, waiting for you to finally run a diagnostic. This isn't a video for the complacent. It's for those like you who have begun to suspect that their deepest fractures are actually a map. We are not going to talk about quick fixes or hollow motivational quotes. We are going to put on the diving gear and explore the shipwreck everyone else is afraid of: your triggers, your compulsions, your fears, your bottomless need for approval, your rage, your emptiness. We are going to learn the syntax of your inner chaos, because your chaos isn't messy. It's a complex, ancient, and perfectly logical code. Your pain isn't the problem. It's the user manual. Are you brave enough to finally read it? Because once you start, you can't go back to pretending you don't know. And then a choice becomes inevitable. Will you continue to be a stranger in your own life? Or are you ready to go into the server room and finally see the master program that has been running your life. Because it's right there in the code you denied that your true agency is waiting. Powerful, raw, and ready for a new command. Perfect. Let's start over from that point. Clear, direct, no artistic breaks. Here's the rest of the video, fluid, intense, keeping that immersive tone with a new framework for the main idea. Let's discuss something rarely admitted, the sheer exhaustion of being self-aware. I'm not talking about knowing good from bad. I'm talking about that hyper, vigilant consciousness that forces you to see every angle, every motive, every potential disaster, while everyone else seems to be coasting on the surface, blissfully untroubled. And I get it, it's draining. Because when you see more, you feel more. And when you feel more, you have to invent ways to manage the flood. The issue is that these coping mechanisms are the very things that wall you off from your true self. See how it works. You start developing habits you can't explain. You push people away for no reason. You get hooked on distractions that bring you no real pleasure. You break your own heart just when things are looking up. But there is no madness here. There is just undigested awareness. When you operate with this level of sensitivity, reality hits you differently. It bypasses the normal filters. It's raw, high definition. Every conversation, every look, every void of silence gets processed through 1,000 layers of meaning. This creates a cognitive and emotional overload that most people will never experience. That's where the compulsive loops are born. They don't come from weakness. They come from overwhelming surplus. You aren't defective. You're just processing a massive amount of data. Your mind holds more information. Your body stores more tension. Your soul weathers more storms until it hits a breaking point. And that's when the glitch appears, the loop, the fixation, the escape hatch. But here's the kicker. In that moment of release, when you binge, when you lash out, when you numb yourself, your nervous system relaxes and logs that action as a solution, despite the destructive fallout. And you, the conscious you, knows this. But you can't stop it because your brain doesn't bow to logic when it's desperate for emotional relief. That's why the pattern repeats. It's not a choice, it's an automatic response. The more you fight it with raw will, the more power it seems to gain. Because you don't need more self-control. You need more self-compassion, more quiet, more permission to actually feel the things you've been bottling up for a lifetime. And you know what adds another layer of confusion? From the outside, you look fine. You have good days, you can be social, you can function. And this makes you doubt yourself. Am I just being dramatic? Is my life really that bad? Why can't I just get over it? This is the gaslighting you do to yourself when you no longer trust the validity of your own pain. But pain is not a subjective opinion. It's a biological signal. It exists, and that is reason enough. Now pay attention, this part is critical. The higher your capacity for emotional perception, the more sophisticated your escape tactics become. You might outgrow obvious vices. Your new addiction might be overworking, a desperate need to fix everyone else, intellectualizing your feelings until they're just abstract theories. Saying, I dealt with that, when you really just buried it deeper. Your methods of running from yourself are more socially acceptable now, but no less damaging. And now we arrive at the most difficult concept. Your shadow, your glitch, it isn't just made of the things you dislike about yourself. It's also built from the things you don't allow yourself to need, the desires you've labeled as wrong, the anger you've hidden behind a calm facade, the profound need to be seen and valued that you've repressed to appear strong. The more you deny these fundamental needs, the more your subconscious will hijack your behavior to try and get them met. It's not a lack of discipline, it's a lack of permission. Permission to be human without apology, to be angry without guilt, to need support without feeling shame, because your destructive patterns are not a search for cheap thrills. They are symptoms of emotional starvation, of needs that have gone unheard, of wounds that are still active beneath the scar tissue. You want to know why it's so incredibly hard to break the cycle? Because your pain, even as it destroys you, is also your home. It's a known quantity, it's predictable. But wellness, true intimacy, deep calm, that feels foreign, unsafe, suspicious. That's why you wreck things when they start going well. Not because you're unworthy, but because your entire emotional apparatus has been trained for years to see peace as a threat. Because it leaves you open, it makes you soft. You have no idea how to operate without a war to fight. This is the absolute heart of it all. Your programming doesn't prioritize happiness, it prioritizes survival. And if you learn to survive in chaos, then chaos is what your system will forever identify as safe. That's why it's so hard to let go. That's why you are drawn to partners who mirror old wounds. That's why you are loyal to habits you hate. Because your body registers the familiar as secure, even when it's agonizing. So this isn't a game of willpower. This is a deep, systemic reprogramming of your emotional motherboard. And that doesn't happen with force. It happens when you finally start looking with unflinching honesty at what you've avoided. When you build quiet moments to feel without judgment. When you stop trying to fix yourself and simply ask, what part of me is asking for attention? What emotion am I trying to outlaw? What impulse am I judging so fiercely that I'm accidentally giving it all my power? Your sensitivity, your intensity, your ability to feel the world, these are not design flaws. They are the artifacts of a mind that had to adapt to an environment that wasn't safe. And now, that very same system is asking you to adapt again. Not just to survive, but to live, to heal, to integrate, to come home to yourself without the armor, without the excuses, with all your glorious, terrifying, tender chaos. Because ultimately, the only real rebellion is to be who you are, without anesthetic. That is the hardest journey, but it's the only one that leads to freedom. And just when you begin to grasp that the point isn't to silence your impulses, but to translate them, another truth emerges that shakes the foundation. You aren't just battling your own life's programming. You are also carrying legacy software, emotional code that didn't start with you, but can end with you if you choose to do the work. Because yes, and this is a hard pill to swallow, many of the overwhelming feelings you have didn't originate in your own life. They are inherited from your parents, your grandparents, your entire lineage. And the worst part is, this code isn't stored in your memory, it's embedded in your body. That baseline anxiety that has no discernible cause. That profound melancholy that hangs over you. That knee-jerk guilt you feel for putting yourself first. Sometimes these aren't your emotions. They are unconscious loyalties, behavioral protocols you absorbed before you could even think. Your body became a living archive for inherited pain. They don't teach you this stuff. It's not in the glossy self-help aisle. But you feel it. You live it every time you try to change, and an invisible force drags you back to the starting line. Has this ever happened? You commit to a real change. You start setting boundaries, protecting your energy, saying no. And suddenly, a wave of guilt crashes over you, like you're breaking a sacred vow you never even made. That's your emotional legacy at work. It's not just about your story. It's about how your family system learned to survive. What they repressed, what they endured, what they silenced. You inherited that code. And now, when you try to run a different program, your internal system flags it as a critical error. This is where most people quit. They mistake the pain of change for a sign that they're doing something wrong, when in reality, it's the very sign that they are finally breaking free. Growth doesn't feel like liberation at first. It feels like treason, because you're violating the unwritten rules that kept a dysfunctional, yet stable, system in balance. That's why evolving is painful. Not because you're failing, but because you might be the first in your entire family line to write a new piece of code. And that comes at a cost. You will feel isolated. You will feel judged. You will feel at times like you are losing your mind. But it is not madness. It is metamorphosis. It is a deep system purge. And nobody throws you a parade for this work. It's silent. It's internal. But you feel it. You know it. It's written in your own biology. So, What do you do when the foundations of who you thought you were start to crumble? First, you understand this isn't a demolition. It's a renovation. It's the moment your identity can finally be rebuilt, not from the expectations of others, but from the truth of who you are. And here begins the next critical phase, rebuilding your sense of self, but not the flimsy version based on praise, achievements, or social validation. I mean core level self-worth, the kind that comes from knowing yourself, flaws and all, and choosing to be on your own side anyway. The kind that holds you steady when you mess up. The kind that becomes your own safety net. And here's the kicker. Most of us have a self-concept that was assembled by others, by the reflections we saw in the eyes of our parents, our teachers, our partners. And eventually, that image becomes a prison because we start living to serve the image, not out of self-respect, but out of a terror of being abandoned. That's the next wall to break, demolishing the avatar. To stop being the person you think you should be and start being the person you actually are. It isn't simple because your value system is often wired to that old image. If you were taught you were only good when you were quiet, helpful, or productive, then every time you prioritize your own needs, it will trigger a guilt alert. But that guilt is a phantom. You don't owe anyone an apology for your existence. You are not on this earth to manage the emotional comfort of others at your own expense. And if your presence, your truth, your energy makes some people uncomfortable, then let them be uncomfortable. You didn't come here to be easily digestible. You came here to be whole. You came to wake up, to evolve, to end the cycle. And please listen to this, because this goes directly to your physical body. You do not need to be on high alert 24/7. You don't have to map out every worst case scenario. You are not in that old danger anymore. But your body hasn't gotten the memo. That's why it's still running the wartime protocols. That's why you live with a clenched jaw and tight shoulders. That's why your sleep is broken. That's why you have a disordered relationship with food. Your body learned that to relax is to be vulnerable. And here is the real work. You have to retrain your nervous system to understand that safety is now the default setting. This is not achieved with wishful thinking or saying mantras to your reflection. It is achieved through thousands of small, repeated acts of self-advocacy, through firm boundaries, through moments of deliberate pause where you literally tell your body, "We are safe. I am in charge now. I will not abandon you. I will not let you be harmed." And yes, at first this will feel strange. It will stir up guilt, emptiness, and a deep, unidentifiable grief. But that is not a sign that it's failing. It's the feeling of detoxing. You are shedding programming you've carried your whole life. You are setting down baggage that was never yours to begin with. And when you start to operate from this place, everything shifts. Your impulses quiet down. Your compulsions lose their power, not because you conquered them, but because they are no longer necessary. You're no longer patching a wound. You're inhabiting your body. You are listening to its signals. You're acting from a place of connection, not a place of lack. And that is the secret they don't tell you. When you finally learn how to truly be with yourself, most of your inner wars simply end. Your intensity doesn't vanish, it gets repurposed. It becomes focused passion, creativity, unshakable authenticity. It's no longer a flood that drowns you, it's a river that carves a new path. And then you stop fighting yourself. You stop seeing your sensitivity as a liability. And you start seeing it for what it truly is, your greatest asset, a compass, your unique way of processing the world and changing it. And that change begins with you, right here, right now. In the moment you can no longer lie to yourself, where your soul is starved for truth, where your body is begging for peace, where your own story is demanding to be rewritten from a place of consciousness, not a place of pain. So don't numb it. Don't hide from it. Don't rationalize it away. Face it, hear it, hold it. Because in the part of you that you fear the most, you will find the very key to your freedom, and you are ready for this, even if you don't feel like it. And now that we are here, before we go on, I have something for you. Our new book, The Formula of Awakening, is finally out. Do you feel that there is something inside of you that is ready to come alive, but you have no idea where to begin? Then I want to invite you to transform the way you think, and with it, transform your entire life. Find out who you have the potential to become. Start today. The link to get the ebook is in the first pinned comment below. Grab your copy now at a special price. With that, let's continue. And this is where it gets really powerful. Because just when you believe you've finally mapped out your inner world, just when you feel you're getting a handle on the emotional source code you're running, something even more profound comes into view. Something most people never find. Underneath all the layers of hurt, the patterns, the anxiety, and the need for approval, there is a fundamental strength waiting to be activated. A strength that looks nothing like what you've been sold as confidence or empowerment. It isn't a perfect social mask or a highlight reel of success. It's something far more raw and real, the capacity to be your own anchor in any storm, without needing anyone else's approval, without having to feel good all the time, without demanding that you constantly be a better, more optimized version of yourself. And when you tap into that, when you start to live from that core, the whole game changes. Life is no longer a performance. Your relationships transform. The way you approach your work transforms. Your very breath transforms. You no longer need to struggle so much. You're not trying to earn your place anymore. You start creating your own space to simply be. And in this world, that is the ultimate act of revolution. But there is one final trap, and it's the most subtle one of all. It is the belief that because you now understand, you are cured. The idea that knowledge equals immunity, that you'll never again relapse into old patterns, never again doubt your worth, never again run from yourself. Let me be clear, you will fall again. Growth does not make you flawless, it makes you honest. You will see old patterns resurface. You will feel that familiar grip of anxiety. You will have days where you are lost in your own emotional landscape. And that is perfectly okay. Because the difference now is that you don't abandon yourself. You see the pattern, you witness it without judgment, and you choose yourself again. That is the fundamental difference between a life run by unconscious programming and a life lived in truth. It's not that things become perfect. It's that you stop believing you have to be perfect to deserve love, respect, and peace. You grant yourself the full permission to be human, complex, inconsistent, intense, and free. And here is the final realization, the one that only those who have walked this path can truly grasp. Your shadow, your glitch, is not what's holding you back. Your shadow is the very thing that is forcing you to awaken. Every breakdown, every moment of overwhelm, every time you feel you can't go on, that is not your system failing. That is your system demanding, stop overriding me. Listen to me. It's time to heal. And when you finally do that, when instead of escaping, you choose to just breathe and be with what is, your true revolution begins. Your real life begins. So, if you are still here, if these words have resonated in your bones as if they were written just for you, understand that this is no accident. You are here because you're ready. You are standing on the precipice, and a part of you has no desire to go back. If this video activated something in you, if it gave you a name for your struggle, a piece of truth, or the jolt you needed, subscribe. But don't do it for me. Do it for you. Because on this channel, we are not interested in the surface level. We will continue to dig, to deconstruct, to illuminate the things others are too afraid to even acknowledge. And let me see you in the comments. If you are truly ready for this journey, write, "I am reading my own code." So I know you made it to the end. I know you're not running. I know you're awake. And now I'll say goodbye, but not with some polished, feel-good conclusion. I'll leave you with a question that will serve you better than any piece of advice. What could you create if you finally reclaimed all the energy you've been wasting fighting yourself? You decide what comes next, another loop or your own awakening.